in my zone.
What's up? So welcome to In the Zone podcast. My name is Jason Allen John, and I'm here with my co-host, Aaron Charles. Say what up to the people.
What's going on? Welcome to the zone, guys.
All right, so we got a special guest with us. I'm going to allow him to introduce himself, and then, I think Aaron will do a little bit of a run around and talk about him, you know what I mean? Because very special to you.
Yeah, I guess so.
You sure? I don't know if he likes me that much.
Oh, man.
Come on.
So my name is Carey Escoffery. I am the chairman of the Escoffery Group. It's a diversified holding company with interest in real estate, renewable energy, and electric transportation mobility.
Round of applause. Carey Escoffery.
That trash!
All right.
Yes.
No round of applause yet.
Yeah, we haven't gotten into anything yet.
Yeah.
No.
So pretty much, we want to invite you onto our first official podcast, Carey. Carey and I, we go way back. Jason, I think you don't know that.
Way back.
We went to high school together, and supposedly we went to elementary school together.
Supposedly.
Yeah, but I didn't see him in the sandbox, like I always say, so it doesn't count.
You know what it was? I'm a couple years older than Aaron.
Yes.
So back in the days, remember, like 2 years meant a lot when you're really young.
Yeah.
Right? Like that's a huge gap.
Grade 4 and grade 6 is
Right?
a big gap.
It's a huge gap. You don't really interact.
true.
And I left elementary school to move to another school in grade 4.
Okay.
There for a limited stay.
All right, so conspiracy.
Yeah. I was there, man.
Conspiracy.
I was there.
So as you guys know, Aaron Charles. I'm in real estate investor, licensed realtor. I'm in the development space as well.
Okay.
A little hesitation there because this week took some battles, but sticking with it, staying in the zone, staying locked in. So Carey, Carey's been in real estate. Carey's been one of those guys that actually got me into real estate.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, that's
so you guys got to tell me this story then.
Oh man.
All right, let's go to
if
that.
If it wasn't for Carey, I wouldn't be in real estate.
Really?
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
You're gonna be
Carey,
that
you're going to
great,
take all that credit?
Hey man.
That's true.
You know what? Let me just take off the mic. Let me just
know
put
what?
the headphones down and walk out right now.
No, it's true. So let me tell you the story. Yes.
We got to thank Carey for that.
I thank Carey for that. So the story pretty much is, I started off in the party entertainment business, started hosting parties.
Okay.
I was working at TTC as well at the same time. And Carey was in the University of Toronto. Mm-hmm. I used to go down there from time to time to visit them.
Yeah, you were practically attending, man. Like you used to come check us on campus all the time.
You guys are in university. I wasn't in university. I had nothing to do.
Why were you really attending? Were you attending to see Carey, or was there other things there?
Yeah. It's a family show.
Okay. All right.
No, but we literally were meeting up to go to the gym.
We were going to the gym, yeah.
Oh, okay,
Definitely going to the gym, working out. And Carey was doing economics, finance?
Commerce and finance. So they got, I guess, the bug to start looking into real estate in school and in class and all that good stuff. And I remember they were going to the Rich Dad, Poor Dad seminars and all that good stuff. And I heard him talking about it one day, and I said, yo, I want in. So I just followed them out to Hamilton. They were setting up their corporation. They were setting up their structures. And mind you, we're like 19, 20. I didn't even know what the hell they were doing. But these guys were very advanced for their age, and I always respected that. And I followed them out to Hamilton. I watched them purchase their first property. And then I started asking a lot of questions. And then I eventually jumped into getting my first property. I found it on Kijiji. And Carey, do you remember you were there for my first signing? I was.
Yeah. So Carey was actually there when I closed my first property.
Yep.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So let's back it up a little bit. Carey, why don't you tell us how you got started?
Yeah.
Man, real estate made a lot of sense to me.
Okay.
When you have a tangible physical asset that has the ability to, generate passive returns.
Yeah.
It just made sense to me. So, I mean, coming from a finance background, finance can get really complicated. There's all kinds of complicated securities and assets that you can partake in, but real estate was simple, straightforward, and that tangible aspect of it just had an added level of security that just resonated with me.
That makes sense.
Right, and so went down the rabbit hole with a few other friends, and
kind of graduated through different types of real estate investment.
Okay.
So, initially it was super passive. I purchased my first condo while in school from Isaac, actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah, back in the days, Isaac was.
Which condo was this?
This was Mississauga. Yeah.
So you purchased Mississauga before Hamilton?
I bought in Mississauga before I bought Hamilton.
So we're in Mississauga, like near Square One area?
Near Square One.
Okay.
I sold that condo.
You sold it for me.
Ah.
So that was my first condo that I purchased. And again, tight-knit circle, bought it through Isaac. Shout out Isaac, Dreammaker Realty. At the time, Isaac was hustling as a realtor. And, like everybody's seen his progress from then, right? So, which is an amazing story. I hope you guys have him on the show sometime.
He'll definitely be here.
To talk about his progress. But really started there, super passive, just owning an asset.
Yeah.
Right? And then that slowly graduated into, how can we leverage real estate as a way to generate cash flow?
Okay.
Because at the time, purchasing a condo wasn't necessarily a cash flow opportunity.
Yes.
We weren't putting a substantial amount of money down. We didn't have it.
Yeah.
And so, it was almost 100% levered, right? At the time, the rules were a bit different.
40-year amortization.
Yeah. So,
Cashback deals.
Cashback deals. We
Zero
were any way to get into the property, like that's what was driving us. So we made our initial investments that way. Realized that investing that way kind of has a longer time horizon to it, and so the next phase for us was, well, we have an asset base that is kind of an investment into the future,
yes,
where we can realize the returns in the future. But how do we invest in something where we can start to generate returns today, right? And that led us to diving into the cash flow property game.
And
right?
what did you do anything else in between that? Like how many years are we talking?
Tons of things in between that.
Okay.
Maybe even taking a step back, and Aaron would have been around at the time.
Where would I've gone?
You haven't been, yeah.
He's been here since elementary school.
Yeah, exactly.
I've seen it all.
He's seen the whole story. But we were dabbling in all types of business ventures. So,
okay.
My first venture, like actually registering a company and starting a business, would have been in the clothing space.
Yeah.
With a
shout
couple
out
of friends.
City Life.
Shout out City Life, which is actually still a going concern and a going business.
Okay.
Not involved anymore, but still really good friends with the owner today, Corey, and kind of a foray into things, right?
Okay.
But we're part of a group. We would meet up every weekend. We had a book that was titled "Get Rich or Die Trying," right? And we would meet on the weekends and just talk about business ideas.
So is that a book you guys created?
Yeah.
Oh, so you titled it "Get Rich or Die Trying."
It was a notepad. We just slapped a sticker on it and titled it "Get Rich or Die Trying."
I guess he liked 50 Cent at that time.
Who didn't at the time, right?
And just to jump in, right? So people can understand this. I was part of that circle.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And it was like legit every weekend.
Every weekend, yeah.
So when people are going out to clubs, people are hanging out, we're 19, 20, 21-year-olds sitting down, playing the cash flow quadrant game.
Oh, wow.
Reading books. Like we had a book club.
We had a book club, man.
We had a book club. Young black boys in the hood having a book club.
Yeah.
And then from that book club, it turned out to you guys, the first set. So in our crew, there's two sets.
Okay.
So there's the older set and then there's a younger set.
Okay.
I'm part of the younger set.
But then the sets start to converge more, right?
Yeah.
As like,
But there's a younger and older
There's a
set,
younger and
even
older
to
set.
this day.
I say that because I don't want to come off as old,
No, but the age difference the age difference is only a year or two.
Okay, yeah.
Right? Even though we're all in the same student body. So when you were off to university, I was just wrapping up high school.
Yeah.
So you had that little bit of a higher outlook on things.
Yeah.
You were stepping into manhood quicker than me in terms of I'm a university. Okay, I'm at the last stage of my life. I got to take this serious. Yeah. So what you were learning, you're bringing back and saying, okay, this is how the world's operating. This is how money works. This is what property is. And then me hearing that, it's like, oh, okay, let me gear up. Even though I'm not there yet, let me gear up. And then legit, these guys bought their first property. It was an apartment building.
Or this would have been the second now. So this
is your second property. Well, the first one you guys kind of hid that till you guys wanted me to sell it.
Hey, man.
And it was a condo. It was a condo. So I heard about it through the grapevine, but no one really understood it at the time.
Right.
But when I really saw multifamily investing was when we start going out to Hamilton.
Right.
So Carey and Ricky bought theirs together first.
Okay.
And then Nimoy bought his second. And then I was third.
You were third. Okay.
I came in third place.
All right.
I didn't like that.
Okay, so now we're back
Man,
full circle.
You got to see the progression and learn from some of the mistakes that were made early on.
Yeah. So now we were young, we were ambitious. We didn't really have much training. Our parents weren't in real estate. They didn't own real estate.
Yeah.
Right.
I definitely didn't get support when I started off in real estate from my family or the community. Tell me, who supported you? Who pushed you to get to that mindset? And then let us know the trials and tribulations that you had, and I can jump in because I know some of them.
Oh my gosh.
And give us the real.
I'm gonna give
no filter.
I'm gonna give you the real. So as far as like the support goes, our support was our network of friends, right?
Yeah.
All guys that were the same age, trying to figure it out. And supportive family, but didn't really have the experience in the space, right? Like you're talking about. So didn't quite understand it, but they were, they were very supportive of it.
Okay.
They liked what they were seeing, and any way that they could, help out, they did. Actually, that first, so if we skip over the condo, right, and we go into starting to get into the multifamily purchases that we started making out in Hamilton.
If you want to talk about the condo, you can.
I mean, the condo was pretty straightforward, right?
Okay.
It was buy and hold. The rent was covering the debt service associated with buying. And,
Yeah.
it was pretty smooth, right? It was a very relatively strong rental market. Didn't have a lot of issues. No really real vacancies. It was a pretty smooth investment.
So 100% turnkey.
Turnkey. Getting into the multifamily cash flow game is a completely different game altogether. For many reasons, right? So again, we didn't really have that experience going in. We were studying some of this material.
Yeah.
So we had that theoretical knowledge, but at some point you got to put that theoretical to work, right?
And then most of that knowledge come from like states?
States?
Like education, like Rich Dad, Poor Dad, books and stuff like
we
that?
did do the Rich Dad, Poor Dad course.
It, even though it came from the States,
Yeah.
it felt like it wasn't like America's way. Does that make sense? Like there's some teachers, like certain things, like if you're doing tax lien laws and stuff like that, it's totally different in America. If you're doing like power sale or
Yes.
take off
Different
foreclosure.
process, yeah.
But when it comes to multifamily, I think it's kind of like across the board information.
Yeah, it's pretty generic,
It's
right?
pretty
It's
generic.
the same formula.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Ultimately.
But there isn't really like the laws weren't too different. Like I know tax lien properties are totally different in Canada
Yeah.
and here, and for sale by owners
Right.
typically different. Right. And also, what's the other one that I'm looking for? Power sales.
Tire sales, yeah.
They call it something else in the States. What do they call it? Power sales, and there's can't remember, but we'll move on.
Yeah.
But in any event, I mean, like the dynamic wasn't that different. You may have some underlying nuances, but it's pretty.
Yeah.
I'm just asking that because most of the stuff that we learn about real estate or investing and stuff is from the States. Most of these books,
Sure,
right?
yeah.
So especially like obviously now because of YouTube and like podcasts,
Yeah.
you're getting some more Canadian content.
yeah.
But I find like a lot of investors that I even speak to or people that I know, everything's coming from the States. So it's kind of, I just was curious, like, how did you like know, okay, I'm going to go to Hamilton and get multi-unit. Did you read that from the States or was that something that you were like, I got to go down there? Or did someone, a mentor in Canada teach you that?
Man, we got what we could afford.
Good question though. Just before you answer, why Hamilton? I just followed you guys.
You followed us.
I had no fundamentals at that time.
So we're in school. We're theory and data driven guys.
Okay.
Right. Not pound the pavement, kind of go see it guys at this point.
Yes.
Right. And so we looked at, I remember at the time, like studying CMHC reports.
Okay.
Right? And like, where is the market going and where, how is the market growing? And there was a lot of talk. I don't know if you remember the Hamilton report that we read that was talking about what was to happen in Hamilton.
Yeah, we got. I think it was a rain report.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly. So I mean, we had these,
I still have that report, by the way.
we have these resources that we're looking at the time that's kind of guiding us to a specific marketplace. The other was like the tech triangle, right? Like out in like Waterloo.
That's when BlackBerry was
right. So
massive.
So there was these pockets that we were interested in and we could afford them.
Yes.
Right. We couldn't touch Toronto at the time, right? We didn't have the resources to touch Toronto at the time.
Would you still say that now, having the knowledge that you have now?
That
you can touch Toronto? Because Toronto, if you look at it now, it wasn't that expensive either. You just wouldn't be able to get as much properties.
It's all relative, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, talk about pricing 5-10 years ago versus pricing today. Every year it's like, oh my God.
Why did I do that?
I remember thinking to myself, who's gonna buy a box in the sky for $300,000, right?
Now it's $1 million.
Yeah, I would buy 10, right?
Yeah.
Like it's night and day. But at the time then too, we were even more capital constrained. We were broke students coming out of the hood, right? Relying on OSAP to like get through school, right?
Were you using OSAP to put your down payment? Did you do the Scott McGilvery method?
So
You didn't.
no, I didn't.
One of our friends did.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah, I don't want to.
I wish I did that.
But no, like we scrounged up what we had. I mean, through high school and through university, I had part-time jobs.
Yeah.
We stashed what we could. That's how I acquired my first property. And then by the time we got out to
Those Athletes World paychecks.
those Athletes World paychecks back in high school,
I worked at Athletes World.
Oh,
All through high
you
school.
were that guy, eh?
I was that guy.
You were the sneaker link.
I was the sneaker link. I was definitely the sneaker link.
Okay.
Yeah.
Which Athletes World did you work at?
Yorkdale.
Okay.
Man, I had
I was a
braids.
Scarborough town guy, so I didn't
Yeah,
really go out
didn't
there
really
that
come
much.
out
So Carey, so buying your first property,
Yeah.
walk us through that process,
Yeah.
and then how was the first couple of months with dealing with your property? Because there's a multifamily. The first couple of months is a good adjustment.
So we, again, from a theoretical perspective, we thought we worked out the master plan, right? We thought we had the strategy down. We thought we were geniuses. And in a lot of respects, it was an interesting approach, but there was some downfall to it. So I'll get into that. We came together as a contingent, put some money together. My dad was actually an investor as well.
Oh, nice.
Shout out to Mr. Escoffery.
To Carey Escoffery Sr.
Yes, sir.
He actually put some money up in this property, so it was kind of split three ways.
So you had your first joint venture partner.
First joint venture partner, and we structured it. We actually structured it, so it wasn't in any individual name. We put a corp together.
Oh, great.
We invested into the company. We're issued our respective shares based on our like pro rata investment in the actual property, and bought the property in a corporation.
Okay.
Right, through a corp. So a bit more sophisticated, right?
Yeah, that's pretty intense.
And at the time, again, this is what we're being taught through school, and
Yes.
limit your liability, and some of the tax benefits that come along with running it through a corp. So we took that approach, right? So that was the first bit that was kind of guided by what we were exposed to at the time and what we were learning, which I think was pretty advanced, right? So
Yeah, it was
at the
advanced.
time, right? It was
It was advanced, but it was the right thing to do.
it was the right
Yeah.
thing to do.
So I wouldn't even call it advanced. You're
Yeah.
just doing the right way.
We were doing it the right way.
A lot of people, they take years to do it the right way.
Right.
And they,
It comes
do,
to
Mistake.
hustling,
and they
right?
do it the wrong way for a
Right.
very long time.
Right. And then the second point was, again, identifying the market that we could participate in where we thought that there was upside, right? Which was, and Hamilton made sense for us, right? Wasn't that far away. It was affordable. And so that made sense. And then we pounded Kijiji looking for deals.
Oh, wow.
Right.
So no real estate agent. You're just,
sale by
was there a
owner.
reason why you went to Kijiji?
For sale by owner.
Okay.
We were
Makes sense.
looking for, we were looking for a bit more control in deal structure.
Okay.
Right.
all
So again, financing and that sort of thing. We were looking for VTBs,
Rich dad, poor dad
right?
strategies.
Rich dad, poor dad structures, and
Makes
I
sense.
mean, just for the benefit of the viewers, a VTB is a vendor take back. That's when the seller of
Mm-hmm.
the property actually helps finance the purchase of the property, right? So you may put up, your amount of equity or
Yeah.
down payment in the property. A portion of that may be taken care of by the seller for some predefined period of time at some interest rate, and then you may get another some debt financing to satisfy
to
the
cover
rest.
the difference. Yeah.
And,
But,
and just to jump in, because I'm on the same journey as you,
Yeah.
Hamilton was really good for
Absolutely.
seller participation
Yeah.
because of the time of the market too, right?
yeah.
So we're
So were people not buying out there?
so we're talking about 2009,
10?
10.
Yeah, 9,
So that was just when the market took a tumble and was coming back up. So it was more of a buyer's market. So buyers were going in and having more control. Sellers want to exit. And Hamilton had a lot of old money in Hamilton. So there were a lot of seniors just dumping their property.
looking to exit, right? Like
Looking
they're ready to
exit.
move on. They'd made their money.
And that was around the same time the steel industry started shutting down out there, right?
Exactly.
Around that time, right?
Right. And I mean, you were kind of in a bit of a situation where people were trying to get out, but we had this longer time horizon, and we're looking at everything that could be, right, and would be. And so, that was, again, the reason why we got into Hamilton. But that's why we were negotiating direct
with the owners.
Yeah. If we were to split the activity, I would say Ricky at the time was doing a lot of the fishing for deals. And I was doing a lot of like the analytics, like where do we want to be? How much do we want to pay?
Yes.
Build out the pro forma, pro forma being just a cash flow projection of how the property is going to perform, and what we wanted to do with it. And that was our approach. So we just went out into the market that way, had a predefined list of rules of what we were looking for. And
which is important.
Which is important.
A lot of people, they don't set the criteria for themselves.
You need a roadmap.
Investing. You need a roadmap. And if you don't have a roadmap, you don't know what you're looking for.
The other thing is with a roadmap, it just kind of it gives you a sense of direction, and it doesn't mean that you won't veer off course or change lanes here and there.
We have a starting point.
It gives you a starting point, and you kind of know how to put one foot in front of the other.
That makes sense.
The other thing that we added to our grand strategy, which was smart but also had its downside, was a function of it too was investing in properties that weren't necessarily in the greatest neighborhoods, right? And Hamilton is a great place to live, but at the same time, it also has this stigma of having some neighborhoods that are kind of rough. Yeah. Right?
Like any city.
Like any city. But in any event, that's what we were targeting. That's what we could afford. And at the time, and you want to give the real, what we were looking for was actually being able to provide low-income housing to individuals that were on social assistance.
Equivalent to like Section 8.
Yeah, Section 86, I think they call it.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
In the States, I guess they call it Section 8 in the States.
Wow.
And so...
just to go on that, did you know, like, what programs that the government had that assisted you guys to get these type of people?
I mean,
or were you just looking people in that income range?
No, like we were actually approaching, again, at the time, it's a strategy, right, on who we were going to approach in order to procure tenants, but it was Ontario Works and ODSP, right? People that were on Ontario Works and ODSP.
How did you get exposed to those type of clients? Was it because you're taking over previous tenants?
No, when we purchased the first property that we got, the building was empty.
Okay.
And one of the things that we negotiated into the purchase was actually a 6-month rental guarantee.
Yeah.
Right? And so essentially what that meant was the previous owner would guarantee us the rent for the first 6 months.
Oh, wow.
So whether, the property was completely vacant, we didn't want to take the risk of having to,
dish out the money in the first
dish out the money,
bit.
like kind of carry the property until we tenanted it. So we negotiated the 6-month rental guarantee. So the previous owner was actually, paying us on a monthly basis while we stacked the property. Right.
So did you have to renovate it at all?
We did have to renovate it, but when I talk about that journey, like we were guys theoretical strategy, but the real estate, we didn't have that yet. Right. And so we purchased the property like, okay, we have this property now. We're going to start putting people in it. And I mean, it was sound to some degree, but it could have used some work. Like in hindsight, it could have definitely used some upfront love.
Yeah. Elbow grease.
Yeah, because we felt the pain later on. Like we just kind of deferred that pain into the future. Right. But we actually reached out to Ontario Works and ODSP. I'm trying to think where that strategy came from, right?
I'm saying, like
what was it that incited that? It may have been the previous owner.
Previous owner, I think, left some tenants there, and then
they were kind of on their way out, and that may have been kind of what informed how we were going to approach it, right? And so we'd actually reach out to Ontario Works and ODSP and say, you know what, this is a building that actually welcomes anybody who may be on an assistance program, and the way that we were looking at it was we were now going to receive checks directly from the government. Right? So in a lot of ways, the funds are actually directed directly to the landlord.
Yes.
And that was the grand idea, right? We're not going to have to, spend our time, collecting rents.
So it's more like, oh, I know these people are going to get the money from the rents because it's coming from the government.
Yeah.
So I'm going to get my money guaranteed all the time. Was the thinking?
That was the thinking.
Okay.
In a perfect world.
And then what happened?
And then we woke up.
Yeah. Because at the end of the day, it's still it's voluntary. Right?
Exactly. So, I mean, you can start a program that way, right? And on some of them, and there's certain nuances, right? But in some instances, if somebody, decided, hey, you know what, I want the check to come to me first, and then I'll remit it to the landlord. They had that option, right? And so this is all learning for us, right?
Yeah.
We're like, oh, guaranteed checks, and then we're like, oh, wait a minute, the check didn't come, and we
the
call,
tenant has it,
and we would have access to the tenant's representative at the program. We'd call them and be like, oh, we didn't receive a check this month. And it was like, oh, well, they opted out of the program. They're receiving the check directly, so you need to go to them to get the check, right?
Oh, man.
So that put a bit of a wrinkle in things, right?
I can imagine.
So tell us, like, what were the things that you had to now do that was not on the pro forma? Because, I'm an investor.
Yeah. Which is...
We always run Excel sheets and, you're like, yes, after all these expenses, I'm going to walk away with $1,000 cash flow.
Yeah.
What came off of that Excel sheet that wasn't there that you had to, like, roll up your sleeves and go to war?
A couple of things. So factoring in bad debts expense, which is what I call it, right? Just the inability to collect, right? And we had a lot of that, right? We had a lot of, well, it ran smooth for the first 6 months because we had a rental guarantee.
Yes.
And then we were stacking, tenants in there and receiving the checks for the first few months, and then not getting a check 1 month, and then following up to find out that the check is now being directed to the tenant. So now we're chasing tenants. So that was one thing. We didn't really factor that into our pro forma, like how much of these rents are going to be a bad debts expense that you're not going to be able to collect, right? Okay. How much of these rents are going to go into like some receivables account that you're knocking on the door trying to get, right?
You say you wrote an article, and like I'll put that link in our show notes. So tell us a little bit why you wrote that article and what happened.
So this is a number of years ago. So I mean, if I fast forward and then come back, I was kind of went the institutional route after school and was working in the bank and getting a lot of exposure there. And somebody actually reached out to me. At the time, I was working in corporate real estate for the Bank of Montreal.
Oh, nice.
And someone reached out to actually have me participate on this, writing an article on the site.
Oh,
right?
wow.
But my approach wasn't, it was speaking to real estate from an institutional perspective, but I was leveraging my own experience, right, in the writing. Because I mean, it's, whether you're buying a 100-unit multi-unit building or a sixplex, which is what we had out in Hamilton, it's pretty much the same approach.
Yes.
Just, add some more zeros, right?
Yeah.
So I took that approach in the article. What I speak to is just that upfront investment and ensuring that how much work needs to go into bringing the property to a place that is sound.
So what is that? So you're talking about the due diligence.
The due diligence. So I mean, we picked up the property and kind of took it as is without assessing what work really needed to be done to make it a sound investment property.
And why is that? That's like, you guys are smart guys. Why would you skip that step? Which I'm now learning that it's the most important step to everything that you do. When I put in contracts and I put in conditions, due diligence is as high up there as anything else. So
what I would say is what led us down that path was thinking we were smart, right? We looked at the property on paper. And when I say on paper, I'm talking, we're looking at the pro forma. We see this amazing cap rate, right? The cap rate is like
10%,
11%, right? So we're like, buy, right? Only to realize like the cap rate was 11% for a reason.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay.
The purchase price was the purchase price for a reason.
Yes.
Had you factored in all of the improvements that needed to be made to the property,
probably at a 6 cap.
6 cap, right?
Like Grant Cardone says, he doesn't want a 10 cap. He wants a 4 or 5.
4 or 5, like steady,
great tenants, great tenant profile.
Yeah.
Well, like
But we always get excited at the numbers, right? So you're looking at the bottom line.
We were looking at the numbers.
And when you look at your pro forma, no one ever puts in their pro forma, oh, in case I lose money.
yeah, like
There's no line, like,
yeah,
in case I lose money line.
yeah. And so, like, you know, coming from a background of finance, right? And that I was in school at the time. It was, well, this is what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to look at the numbers, and the numbers make sense. But I wasn't trained at the time to look at a property from a structural perspective, right? We didn't have that competency in-house. Like, that wasn't a part of our contingent.
Yeah.
We were number crunchers.
Yeah. And the other thing too, right? It's real estate investing comes down to a little bit of common sense as well.
Oh,
too.
for sure. Yeah.
And I think a lot of people, you know, they try to outsmart the game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you got to use your wits about the game too, in terms of, okay, I see this property looks good on paper. That's one check. Now you got to go physically see the property and see is this something I can handle? Do I have the capacity to handle something like this? Right. And like I said, I've been on these guys' journey. When I first started a property, it was like, yo, this looks like a lot of work. But I never doubted them because who I am, I'm like, oh, these are very smart guys. Yeah. They got this shit figured out. Let me continue to watch and learn.
Yeah.
So yeah, Carey. So I was there.
Yeah. You were there.
I was there when the hazmat
suits
came
out, man.
Yes, Jason.
Hazmat? What happened?
So just give us the real story of why it's important to do your due diligence, why you're purchasing multifamily properties in low-income areas, in areas that, you know, you're not dealing with the best tenants. What kind of stuff can happen to your property that if you don't roll up your sleeves and get going, you can actually lose everything?
Yeah. So again, we were in a bit of a rough neighborhood. You know, I spoke to not being able to collect rents on time and that issue, the issues there. We had some really interesting personalities that were actually our tenants, right? So we had tenants that hated each other. I'm in this unit and I'm in this unit, and they would, you know, the altercation, they would fight. I remember being in bed on like a Saturday morning and getting a call from the Hamilton Police Department saying, are you the beneficial owner of property, da-da-da-da?
Yeah.
Like, I'm in a daze. I'm tired of Saturday morning. Yes, I am. We had to breach your door. And I'm thinking to myself,
what does that mean?
That doesn't sound good. You have to breach my door?
Yeah,
that means kick your door off.
Yeah,
right? So we flew down to Hamilton. I'm not sure if you were there that day, but you know, like Nimoy and I flew down to Hamilton and to find our door on the front lawn, right? They kicked the door in to get inside because there was an altercation. We had a tenant that was disgruntled that we had evicted. They poured cement down our drains, right? So plumbing bill. We had
that's beyond the plumbing bill.
we had another tenant that just suffered from some mental health issues and walked into the unit one day to find like knives stuck in the walls, and it was so we dealt with you know, now it's okay, here's the analysis and here's the paper and here's the reality of the situation, right? Looking at the property from a structural perspective, understanding that you know, collecting rents, understanding that tenant personalities can have an impact on your property itself, especially when you get into the multifamily space, right? Because people are interacting with each other, right? So these were just some of the challenges that we experienced. You know, initially we didn't have a property manager. We were just trying to do everything on our own. We hired a property manager only to feel like the property manager was creating more work. Than us doing it ourselves. It's like, you know, they didn't have, they didn't really attach themselves to the property as if it was their own.
Yes.
You know, they didn't really care. Like, I'm getting my check, I'm getting my 5% of gross. And
cares.
So, you know, all of these things are just elements that really need to be assessed up front, right? And this isn't to scare anybody. This is just to show the reality of the situation if your due diligence isn't done properly up front. And understanding that there's multiple disciplines of due diligence, right? It's not just finance on paper. It's not the math makes sense.
So if you're to do it all over again, you know,
which we had to do, right? Like we had to, you know, we learned.
We're 10 years older now.
Yeah, the key was we learned from those mistakes. And I hear you say it all the time when you're giving your master classes, right? It's, I learned from the mistakes, so you guys don't have to.
Exactly.
Right? Which is great. And it makes a lot of sense. Like we bought MBAs, like, you know, Masters of Business degrees over and over and over, just going through these failures, right?
Yeah, I could see that.
To the point where we're like, we have a system, we have process, we understand the inner workings of things. And I would say, like, you know, there was definitely a point where we got to the point where the amount of effort, it being out of the city, not necessarily having a footprint on the ground to oversee our portfolio of properties, we just started to liquidate, right?
Okay.
We started to liquidate. It was just kind of like, you know,
How many properties did you guys get up to?
So as this group, there was
In Hamilton.
So there was the sixplex that I had. Nimoy had a triplex,
and then you guys stopped there.
and then you had.
Well, you want to add mine in?
Yeah, I was thinking just kind of as a contingent.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? Your story kind of goes. I want to give us a segue into your story, right?
Okay.
So we're out, right? Like this time I've now finished school. I'm working. Got a full-time job, man.
You're good. You're like,
right?
I'm good.
So this is before I kind of branched out and became an entrepreneur and started my own
Yeah.
business and whatnot. Like, I'm working, right?
I don't have time for
I'm
this.
getting calls from tenants. I'm getting calls from when are you going to be at the landlord-tenant board? I'm getting calls from. It just became a lot to handle, a lot of responsibility. And a lot of that, again, caused by our own having not done the necessary due diligence up front. So we ended up liquidating and took losses, right? I mean, other things kind of came into the fold as well. We had like remediation issues, sewer backups, like things just, when you get cement poured down the drain, it causes some issues, right? So it became a real problem. And in hindsight, those problems were such a huge opportunity. But we didn't have the time, nor do we have the knowledge at the time. And that's my segue into Aaron.
Yeah.
Right? Because while we were like, yeah, we're pulling the plug here, and now we're, kind of going back into Toronto and Mississauga area and focusing on more passive. I'm gonna do the condo thing, right?
Yeah.
That's, and bank on speculative like appreciation, which is maybe into the future.
Yeah.
And not necessarily generating cash flow, but is less of a headache, right?
Yeah.
Whereas what Aaron did was, Aaron was having some of these issues as well in Hamilton. But Aaron said, like, Aaron came to the point where he was like, at the time, Aaron and I were roommates.
Oh, okay.
We were living together downtown in a
Oh, yeah, I
condo.
totally forgot about that.
Yeah.
Savagery.
Grosvenor.
Yeah. We had a place together. We were roommates.
Co-living,
man. Co-living before co-living, man.
You're property dated?
More to come on that. And I remember Aaron being like, Aaron still had his properties. He didn't take the same route that we did, where we were just kind of like, you know what, we're going to liquidate, we're going to take an L. Aaron was like, nah, I'm going to live this out, and I'm going to continue to grow. And in fact, it came to the point where Aaron moved to Hamilton.
Oh, wow.
So Aaron was like, I was kind of moving out. Aaron was like, yeah, I'm going to get a place in Hamilton and actually stay in Hamilton, because I want to continue to grow my real estate portfolio.
Nice.
I was like, oh, you're out of your mind, but all right. At the time, you made some real downside decisions just to be able to position yourself there.
Yeah.
You had the Beamer.
So I got into Hamilton, same time as Carey, went through the same thing, the very first property I had. I did some due diligence, but, like any investor, you get excited.
Yeah.
So you made
It's your first.
Yeah. You're coming from, what would I say? Underprivileged opportunities, low income opportunities. So you want to show your family and your friends that, you're making progression. 21 years old. I'm like, I got this. Overlooked my property. Should have done a little bit more due diligence, but it wasn't as bad as Carey and those guys, what they went through. Because I only picked up a triplex. Triplex.
Yeah.
And, I was having tenant issues as well. And, I was having some plumbing issues as well and sewer issues. Because I realized in Hamilton at that time, a lot of those owners, because of the type of tenants they were attracting, they were also treating the property as such.
Right.
As,
like throwaway.
If there's a plumbing issue, wrap it with duct tape. That type of behavior, right? So guys like us coming from a different type of mindset, we're not understanding that people are cutting corners. We're thinking the property should be running as smoothly as it should.
Yes.
It started giving me a lot of issues.
And it's not even to say, like, I just want to,
Yeah.
it's not even to say that we didn't do like a home inspection before we purchased the property, right?
Yeah.
But we thought a home inspection, like, it's, okay, home inspection, check. It was just a checkbox to us, right?
Yeah.
Home
Like, we're
inspection.
going through a process of, okay, what do we need to do acquire property? legal structure in place, equity in, what's our financing, look at the deal structure, look at the cash flow. Okay, as far as it went to the structural integrity of the property, it was a checkbox for us that was do a home inspection. We had a guy go in, he paid him $900. Yeah, okay, cool. All right, cool. We checked the box. It was just a checkbox for us, right? It was like, okay, that element is done.
But not taking not going over the report as thoroughly as you should have.
Even the report itself, I just felt like.
Why, your report came back okay?
It wasn't okay.
So there you go. It wasn't just a checkbox.
It wasn't okay.
You overlooked it.
It wasn't okay.
Oh my God.
But it wasn't like
you thought you had it all figured out.
Yeah, it wasn't nightmare mode, right?
Yeah, it's like for me, like there were some issues, like they pointed out some certain things, and I was like, okay, cool, I'll take care of that.
I'll get around to it.
Yeah, but when you realize it's one issue after the other and it costs money,
Yeah.
you start to say, oh my God, I start to cry.
Yeah.
But just to go off what Carey was saying, so I ended up buying 3-4 properties in Hamilton.
Mm-hmm.
These guys were just sticking to their one because they're still trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
Me, if you guys know who I am, I just got a little crazy. And I just started going buck wild. So I ended up having 6 properties. Then I started to get into okay, tenant overload, issues overload. So, Carey and I decided time to part ways. Fun is over. And I moved to Hamilton. I had a brand new BMW at the time because, I was making cash flow, was taking care of the car. And I had to downsize. And remember when I came home with that $5,000 Honda Accord?
The Civic.
Honda Civic, yeah.
Standard.
Stick.
Yeah, stick.
I didn't even know
you
drive
need to know how to drive stick. So Aaron
I had them deliver it from Hamilton
Yeah.
to our condo. I had 5 days before to move out. So for 5 nights, I was just practicing from P1 to P5.
in the underground garage of the condo.
Yeah, and then the day I had to move out, I was driving, stalling, all the way to Hamilton. Finally made it there. And then, so pretty much I moved out to Hamilton, tackled the problem head on, and then figured it out. So I ended up being out in Hamilton, investing in multifamily for 10 years.
So when did you come back here?
Well, I've always been here.
No, I mean when did you really leave Hamilton?
I guess how long did you live out there?
So I lived in Hamilton for about 3 years.
Okay. All right.
2.5 to 3 years.
And then when you left Hamilton, is that when you sold your properties and came back to the city?
So when I moved back to Toronto, I still had a couple of properties in the portfolio out there. I put property management in place, and then I was also doing some property management as well. And then I structured a deal with another property manager / investor. Mm-hmm. He is kind of my mentor as well. Okay. He would take over the properties, he would manage it, and then we'll do a equity split.
Yeah.
And then it didn't really work out because I guess too many issues were happening, and he didn't want to follow through. So I ended up taking back over the properties, and then I just put them up for. So I ended up leaving some of the properties empty and just selling them. Because it got to a point where it's I was just in bad areas, bad locations, and you just couldn't put good people there. The good tenants wouldn't stay long.
You got off to a bad start over there.
I wouldn't. Yeah. Okay. Fine. Fair. Got off to a bad start, but everything I learned in Hamilton
is the foundation.
Is the foundation of who I am today.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Negative and positive.
Yeah, for sure.
My anxiety issues is from Hamilton.
I can understand.
But
this guy's having flashbacks.
But if I was to do it all over again, I'll ask Carey the same question. The one thing that I'll do all over again is be a little bit more patient. Take the due diligence part a lot more serious. Mm-hmm. And it's quality over quantity, always. I think for me, it was a race to a certain number.
Yeah.
And I got to that number. I wanted 10 properties by 25 years old. Mm-hmm. I got that. But when I got there, it meant nothing because it wasn't of quality. Mm-hmm. So I just gave myself work.
So you just really went out for a number. You accomplished that number, but was that right number?
Exactly.
You may have been more happy with 3.
I would maybe be happy with 2, 3 pre-constructions at the time in Liberty Village versus having 10 properties, 50 units of headaches out in Hamilton. And don't get me wrong, Hamilton's not a bad city. Yeah. It's just I have to know what is happening at that time. So right now in Hamilton, the parts that I was at that are considered bad have gentrified.
No, they're good.
And they brought the GO train station there. And I got to capitalize on some of those opportunities that came in eventually that cleaned up the city. Yeah. Like where you had your first property.
Oh my God.
The GO station was built right behind it.
Wow.
I paid $200,000 for my property. Ended up selling it for $600,000.
Okay.
Right. So
So it worked in some
It
fashion.
worked because I had like legit more patience.
Well, I want to ask you guys both something.
Yeah.
So before, because we want to talk about being in the zone, right?
Yeah.
So with those scenarios, what you went through, Aaron, and what you went through, Carey, did you ever feel like you're in the zone at any of those times while you're going through the process?
Oh man, we were definitely in the zone. We were in the zone through it all, and it wasn't even for in our scenario. It wasn't like we just kind of woke up one day and said, we don't want to do this anymore. Like we went through a lengthy process of trying to right the wrongs after the fact. But Aaron was in the zone, and what in the zone meant was, I'm going to move to Hamilton.
Yes.
That's in the zone.
That's
Yes.
locked in.
Like we were having fun in Toronto. We were living downtown. We were going out. Like we were living pretty dope at that age, right? You got a little place downtown.
Don't be humble. Tell them you're living it
We were
up.
doing our thing. Right? We have parties and we were doing our thing. But in the zone meant, okay, I got to get rid of my Beamer.
Okay.
Right? In the zone meant I'm gonna buy this $5,000 Civic and learn stick in the underground and drive it to Hamilton and live there so that I can manage my portfolio. And what came out of that, like the student became the teacher. This guy, looked at the issue dead on and developed a plan for it, right? And a lot of it was around just improving the structural components of the property.
Yeah.
And that, you see Aaron doing development and infill and development projects now, but it's rooted in the foundation of you needed to fix your portfolio.
Yeah, I had to fix it.
Right? He got into the business of, whereas we were kind of stuck and do we want to put more money in? And the other thing that I want to raise is when we were purchasing these properties as a contingent of people, right?
Yeah.
Partnerships can also get in the way of progress.
Correct.
Because people have different opinions.
Correct.
Right? And you need a unified approach if you're going to do anything. And so where my approach at Hamilton at the time was stick it out, like, what do we have to do?
So staying in the zone.
Staying in the zone. My partner had kind of moved on and was like thinking other things. And so it was like, okay, well, we need X dollars to invest to get it. And it was like, that's X dollars that I could be put in here where my man is at. And it was like, okay, well, we need some man hours. I need, I'm working on this. And so I'm over here. And so, just another word of caution and experience is when you're going into these types of things with partners, make sure that you're aligned and you have a common interest, and you stay the course of what it is that you're trying to do. I mean, that's not a stab. It's just, people will move in different directions, right? And it's something to take into consideration. Aaron got in the zone, didn't have a lot of, didn't have others kind of swaying him in the other way because it was your decision to make. You stuck it out. And what ended up coming out of that was a monster. But in addition to a monster was skill, like a skill set that we never had, right? You started, fixing your properties, renovating your properties. And I was looking at you like, holy cow, like this guy's now this. I remember, fast forward a bit, and I was going to see properties with you, and you were like knocking on walls, and that's got to go. Like looking at, and it's like, you know what? I'm gonna have to get a permit to do that. And I'm looking at you like, wow. Right, that all came from going through the headache of cleaning up your old portfolio. But now when you're looking at properties, it's like what to look at. I would take that wall out, but no, maybe it's load bearing. I don't know. Like I'm listening to this guy,
and you're sitting there, you're like,
and I'm like, when did this happen? Like, what are you, an engineer now? Like, when did that happen?
No, but it's important. Like, just to ask. I'm gonna go off of what Jason was asking. Staying in the zone. What staying in the zone for me means is just being. You're so focused on that goal that you don't hear any noise, right? So it's like I look at it like a basketball player when they're shooting in that stadium and everyone's screaming, and he's just hitting those shots. He doesn't hear the crowd. He just sees the net's huge. So for me, it was like, okay, I feel the pain of Hamilton because of the little juvenile mistakes I made in the beginning, but let me just lock in right now. So there's a point in time where it's like I was driving from downtown Toronto in the night, in the morning time traffic to get to Hamilton because I work night shift. And during the day, then I had to deal with tenant issues, paint units by myself, renovate, with my son, renovate, whatever, anything I need to do, I got it done. But because I was so locked in, it didn't feel like work to me.
The other thing that I'll add
That's
to
the
that
thing when you're in the zone. It doesn't feel like work.
What was good though for us as a group of friends that kind of came up and we're doing things together. Even though Aaron didn't have like a direct interest in my property, we kind of helped each other.
Yeah.
Right. So there was points where, you remember when our property was trashed?
Yeah.
And at the time we didn't have any money to hire a
Hazmat suits,
cleaning crew to come in and so we had to go out, buy hazmat suits, hazardous material suits, had the mask on, had to, actually clean this stuff up ourselves, like getting in the trenches, right? But we had a team, right? So it was like, yo, Aaron, do me a favor, man.
For the weekend.
You gotta, give me a weekend. Like, we're gonna go out. We're just gonna haul this stuff off. We're gonna rent a truck and dump it at the dump site and whatever. And
so where you? So
yeah.
moving forward from Hamilton, just a tad bit.
Yeah.
Because I think we all get it. It was a little difficult, and
but learnings came out of it.
learning came out of it. A lot of money was made out of it too.
Yeah.
Where are you now with real estate investing?
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure you entered back into the zone right now. Because
Yeah,
I
for
see
sure.
you these days, you're even sleeping in your office.
Yeah, man.
You're helping
I'm
out
not
on the
sleeping.
development side now. You purchased some pre-constructions. You
Yeah,
just
man.
closed on your pre-construction.
Yep.
Congrats, man.
Bathurst and King.
Yep.
So you're back in the zone. Welcome back to the zone, because a lot of people who fall out the zone don't get back into the zone.
Oh, you got to get back in
And
the
it's
zone. man.
important to get back in the zone for the simple fact that you and I know, and Jason knows, that trial and tribulations comes with everything. And I don't look at anything as a loss. I look at things as lessons learned. And I've made money in real estate. I've lost money in real estate, but I don't even look at the lost money as money that was lost. I look at it as money that had to be paid forward to the game.
Yeah.
In terms of, people go to university and they spend
Education, man.
$80,000, $100,000
Yeah.
for learning. So why do I look at it if I spend $20,000
Hands-on experience.
hands-on
touch
experience
it all.
Yep.
to learn real estate,
Yeah.
to eventually learn how to make millions of dollars in real estate? So tell us, are you back in the zone? And if you are, what the hell are you up to now, bro?
Back in the zone, real estate. So I'm advising Golden Triangle, lending some of my corporate experience that I had in corporate real estate, and some
by the
corporate
way.
finance. Yeah, no, I'm here for you, man. And some corporate finance, background that I have to help kind of develop a financial plan, develop structures, raise funds, which is a bit of a beast. That's a topic on its own. But yeah, so
what's your portfolio looking like
so
now?
portfolio now consists of really my personal portfolio consists of really passive real estate.
Okay.
So some condo developments, like some new construction. I think I have two new constructions that will be delivered, I think, next year, and then a bit further out for some of the other ones.
You closed a couple this year.
Closed a couple this year.
Sold a couple last
I
year.
sold one last year to make way for some of the ventures that I'm doing now outside of real estate.
Okay.
And so I look at real estate in kind of in two ways. So I'm definitely advising Golden Triangle on their strategy forward, lending that experience that I have and that expertise that I have. My personal portfolio, it's definitely like a staple as far as parking cash, having what I call like an inflation hedge, which I actually speak to in that article as well, like how real estate in your own personal investment portfolio can be an inflation hedge.
Okay.
Right. And it, just to keep it super simple, when you have step-ups in rent that are permitted by way of regulation, you can actually keep pace with inflation, right? So you have cash flow that's coming in that you're almost guaranteed will have a step up into the future to kind of keep with increases in prices, right? So it's definitely a good investment vehicle for that purpose. But again, just going back to the foundation of it being like a tangible asset, something that looks really good in your portfolio in the eyes of financiers and banks. It actually helps some of the activity that I have when I need to do personal guarantees and things like that. It's like, well, what do your assets look like, right? So that's where I am as far as real estate is right now. The element that I will add is one of a venture that we're actually all involved in, got into like a property management game, cash flowing, properties that would have normally been more passive, in a more aggressive way through like short-term rental.
Okay.
We're actually exiting that space.
Okay. Is there a reason why?
Changes in regulation.
Okay.
Primarily. So, anybody can kind of look at what's happening in that space right now. It will be regulated. And so that dynamic is kind of driving us to look at other things.
So what's new?
So, the last number of years, my main focus has been in the renewable energy and electric transportation space.
Okay.
So story there, my business partner, Xavier, founded a business called Exergy in 2011.
Okay.
And essentially what he was doing at the time, there was a program offered by the Ontario government called Microfit. And what Microfit was a feed-in tariff program for solar systems on residential roofs.
Oh.
Right? And what a feed-in tariff is if you install a solar system on your roof, the government would pay you a fixed rate on a 20-year contract for the energy that you were able to produce through that solar system.
Okay.
So instead of powering your home, you would actually be feeding that power back into the grid. Right?
That makes sense.
And the government was paying you for that power that you were producing for the grid.
Was it lucrative for people?
So it changed over time. So initially, the rates that the government were giving you at the initial incentive was huge, right? So you're getting like 80 cents per kilowatt hour. I know I'm getting into like technical speak, but just consider it like this: we would receive 80 cents per kilowatt hour versus paying like an average of 10 cents per kilowatt hour, which is what you pay, right? For electricity, and the government was just pushing the mandate of shifting to more sustainable forms of power generation. And this was a way to, ramp up, one renewable form of power generation, kind of moving away from coal and fossil fuels. And
this is when like oil prices were probably like 120, 150.
Yeah, I mean,
when we were going crazy.
I mean, the program, again, had the mandate of just trying to, move towards a more green economy, right?
Okay.
And so he started this business, and he was literally going door to door after having left a really good engineering role at a really big engineering firm or engineering company.
Yeah.
And said that he wanted to do something for himself. One of the smartest guys I know. I've known him since university. We've always had a really good rapport. I think we had a lot of respect for each other really early on.
Okay.
Kind of led to us furthering our business relationship, but I'll get to all of that. So he was going to door and selling a homeowner. Hey, I can install a solar system on your roof. I'll take care of all of the administration associated with that. The system is going to cost you X. This is what I project the system is going to make. You'll pay back your initial investment in like 5, 6, 7 years. And then you have 13 years of cash flow. Cash flow that's just going to flow to you, right? And some were like, yeah, okay, that's a pretty decent investment. And we would have entered into contracts with them to develop the system for them. But I mean, $40,000 at the time was like it's a pretty big ticket for a lot of homeowners, right?
I can imagine.
So he was doing that, and he was building systems and building up his technical expertise. Like again, he's an engineer. Has that strong technical background, and he got to a point where I remember this. He got to a point where he's like, "Man, I don't know if I can knock on any more doors and continue to do this." Right? Like he was on roofs and in the winter, and like it was like, man, I don't know if this is where I want to go. And I remember sitting down with him and having looking at the business and saying, okay, well, how does this all work, right?
Yeah.
And he kind of explained the technical elements, and I had very finance and business related questions to how he was doing things. Particularly I was like, okay, well, what is the cost to maintain a solar system?
Yeah.
And it was like virtually none. Like it's relatively cheap to maintain the system. I was like, yeah, that's good. It's not like you're going to have these increasing costs to continue to have the system. What is the cash flow like? Well, it's coming directly from the government, and it's on a 20-year PPA, a 20-year term. So you're guaranteed that you're going to get this money.
Yeah.
Okay. And then the other thing from like a risk profile perspective with my finance hat on was, I mean, the chance of the sun not coming out tomorrow is pretty low, right? If the sun doesn't come out tomorrow, we have bigger problems. Like we're not even thinking about the contract anymore. It's, you know, we got a bigger problem. So I looked at it as an investment product. I was like, you know what? Looked at the yield and I was like, this is a strong yield for the risk that an investor would take. It's just the door that you're knocking on doesn't speak finance.
Yes.
Right? But institutions speak finance. And so we put our heads together on the engineering and finance side and started to kind of develop this idea of a green bond where we would raise capital. That capital would be used to build the system.
Yeah.
And so the homeowner wouldn't have to come out of pocket at all.
It's just they give you the permission to...
They give us, we enter into an agreement with them where they give us the permission to use their roof. We pay them, say, 20% of the revenue that comes in to use their roof, and then the other 80% flows to us and our investors, right? And so that created a very different product, and there was actually an appetite for that, right? I'm knocking on a homeowner's door and saying, no cost to you, you're going to get this. I'm going to an investor and saying, here's a really low risk profile investment that actually has some decent returns.
Yeah. And
the sun is coming out every day, right? And so that created a product that we started to push and develop, and just, through the grapevine and as things developed, we actually built a relationship with a investment fund based out of New York that gave us a mandate letter, a pretty sizable amount of money to go and build or procure systems.
Oh, wow.
Right. So, we ended up, we ended up working with them and sourcing portfolios of existing systems, developing plans to build systems with this money to help grow their portfolio and being their boots on the ground in Canada, right? So we are their joint venture partner in Canada, doing all of the work necessary to grow that portfolio. I use the term joint venture loosely. I'm a very technical guy, as Aaron will tell you. So, contractually, no, but that is essentially what we were doing for them. We were the boots on the ground and the footprint here. So we started growing that portfolio. Kind of a fast forward to today, we manage about 500 solar systems across southwestern Ontario. Okay. Represents about 5 megawatts of power generation for the technical guys out there. Oh wow. Which is pretty decent.
Yeah, that's a pretty decent amount.
So hearing that story, which is good, congratulations on you building that out as well alongside of real estate. So like for people listening to our podcast, what kind of characteristic does it take to pick up that type of momentum in your business and continue to, move forward after suffering losses in maybe another business, right? And once again, I call that, locking down and getting into the zone to get into the next position. Yeah. And I like to use in the zone a lot because when people ask me, like, how do you do it? I just say, I'm just locked in. I'm in the zone because I come from a sports background. Yeah. And we understand that when you're in the zone, it just means nothing wrong can happen to you in this specific moment. Right. Yeah. You're just everything's just perfect. Everything you practice for is happening right now. Yeah. So, you went to school, you got your finance background. Now you're into the business where you put on your finance hat, and now all of a sudden, you changed, you pivoted a little bit from the thinking of how your first approach was going to be. Now you got the banks involved, and then boom, got your contracts in place. Yeah. And now you have a portfolio of 500. So someone listening to this, and you are an entrepreneur or someone looking to get into the business space, what kind of dedication, characteristics, behaviors do you need to get such traction?
So, a lot of tenacity, right? Like you just need to stick to it. I find a lot of people are like, they may start something and they're right there. You don't know when you're going to hit it.
Never
right?
know.
There's no timing.
There's no timing. But if you really believe in what it is that you're working on, just keep going.
So you have to have faith.
You have to have faith. You have to have faith. And just, keep pushing through it.
How about confidence?
Confidence has to be through the roof. And it grows over time, right? Because what ends up happening is you stumble across things and, you go through the pain and you emerge a subject matter expert at it.
Yes.
Right? Which is where you're at.
So hold on.
Right?
So would that mean now, patience, 10 years, 10,000 hours, that
10,000 hours, man. You gotta put the 10,000 hours in. And I gotta, I'll rewind and give a lot of credit to my business partners, especially in that business. Like Xavier was pioneer.
Yeah.
Right. He was really a pioneer that kind of reached out and said, okay, you know what? I think you can help me.
Yeah.
And that kind of, having the relationship that we had, I think we both, again, had a strong respect for each other, knew that this is going to be a good partnership, right? This isn't a fly-by-night, like, oh, let's try something. This is, okay, no, we're going to commit to this. We both understand it. We both believe in it. And we have other partners as well. So, shout out Ron, shout out Zach.
They came after, though.
Yeah, I'm going to speak through a journey because it gets really, really interesting. But that was the foundation of it. So again, being in the zone, being locked in, Xavier had left his job and so was committed to this fully. I was still working at the time, right? So I'm balancing act, and he's really engaged on the day to day, and I'm coming in and backfilling the things that require my expertise.
Yeah.
It was all those elements that kind of came together. So it was the tenacity, it was the believing in yourself, it was having the strong partners, people that are going to lift you up, people that are going to keep you engaged, and a lot of some luck too, man.
Yeah.
So being approached by this fund out of New York was, oh, I heard you guys are in this space. We don't know anybody else in the space. Can you guys help us? Right?
Was it really luck, though, or it was just preparation?
It's serendipity, right? I like serendipity is
that's a great word.
Yeah, man.
Serendipity. There we go.
It's serendipity, man. It's
Carey also has the words.
It's also, it's also one of those ones like being prepared for whatever opportunities are available
Exactly.
for you. Like I was just watching something on Jordan, and Jordan was saying he practices like he was in the game because you just never know when that moment's gonna come. So like the New York Forum came and approached you guys.
Yeah.
Well, why did they approach you? Because you guys were ready. Because you guys were prepared.
Yeah.
You guys were in the right place at the right time.
Yep.
So yes, you could say, it's lucky that they came up to you, but there's no luck because they wouldn't have came up to you if you guys never did all those steps.
You're absolutely right. It was serendipity.
Yeah.
They didn't approach just a random guy on the street.
Yes.
They came to the guys that they heard of and saw in the marketplace doing something similar to what they wanted to do.
Exactly.
And that's what I say to people all the time. I don't really believe in luck. It's just, it's like, I look at it from a perspective of, you're practicing. You're in the game.
In the game.
While you're sitting on the bench.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, your number gets called.
Yeah.
And you get up and you perform.
Yeah, and you got to
and then the whole world sees you.
So what's key is like, I guess let's bring it back to what we call our podcast, in the zone. How do you stay in the zone when you're still on the bench?
For me, like, I practice like if I'm in the real deal.
Okay.
So meaning it's almost like they say fake it till you make it, but faking it till you make it doesn't mean you're actually faking something.
Yeah.
It just means that what you're doing holds no consequence yet.
Correct.
Right? Meaning me going out to Hamilton, looking at 10 properties, running a performance sheet is practicing, but there's no real money behind it. So there's nothing for me to win or lose.
Yes.
But the minute I get that first investment in my hand and I go do it, now the game's on, and we're going to see how your skills are in terms of how you perform. So for me, it's just, it's just constantly keeping your eye on the prize no matter what stage you're at. And I feel a lot of people, they get motivated and energetic and ambitious once they see money on the table.
Yes.
Right? So they go into it with the wrong intentions right off the bat.
Yeah.
For me, it's what are you doing when you're not motivated and excited and ambitious? And we talked about that today. When I said, hey, Jay, I don't even feel motivated to pursue this anymore. And you're like, wow, that means something big's happening because you're still getting up and doing it.
Yes.
Right? It's doing things when it doesn't really count for anything.
Yeah.
Right? And then when it matters, you step up and you get in there and you perform and you lock in. That's how you breed champions, right?
And I bet you guys weren't even prepared for that New York thing, right? Were you?
Yeah, we were. We
were
were. Like,
ready,
when it
eh?
came, it was like,
It's us.
Yeah, like when we looked at what they were
Because
looking
you're
for,
already
like,
building the skills,
yeah,
the
we're
confidence, the
this
faith.
is what we do,
Yeah, everything was there.
right? And so it just gave us the ability to scale, right?
Was it one of those ones where like, it's like almost like a checkpoint? Like if you're like on a scavenger hunt and you're going somewhere and then you look on the map and then like, oh, you're going the right way. Was that like when you got that call, did you feel that like, oh, what we're doing, we're actually doing what we were meant to be doing or something like that?
Man, it's funny because I think back to like early conversations that we would have as a group, talking about like just kind of vision, right? And like what the roadmap was. And no, like we set out, it kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier, right?
Yeah.
Like there was this roadmap and a direction that we were driving in. And we were going down that path, and then a new lane opened up, and we kind of like, let's kind of veer off a little. Like we're not veering into something completely different, but like, okay, let's see where this takes us.
Yeah.
Right?
It almost brings up to one of my philosophies I always say in life. Yeah. Like I always say, there's so much times that we cross forks in the road. Like we're going the right way. And it's like my philosophy I use when I think about like God and stuff like that. He knows if you go left, what's going to happen. If you go right, what's going to happen. Yeah. But he doesn't make you make that decision.
Yeah.
So like you were saying, you're you're driving away, and all of a sudden you reach the fork and you're like, could we take this opportunity or do we keep going on our path? And you're like,
yeah, man. So it's not a straight line.
Yeah,
right?
It's entrepreneurship, and it's like the cliche illustration that we always see. Squiggly line.
Yeah.
And you know, the problem is with entrepreneurship is just that wherever you end up is where you're supposed to be.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's just that we're in a tumble.
Yeah.
So where we get spit out is where we get spit out.
It evolves.
That's it's evolution for us, right? Carey, as for entrepreneurship, because obviously you're a real estate investor, you're in business, in solar business. Like, what has been the hardest part of entrepreneurship for you?
Oh man.
And what has been the most beautiful part of entrepreneurship for you?
Man, I got some deep.
Let's just give us one each.
Just
which one are you starting off with?
Man, so
Most difficult?
Most difficult is like, have you guys ever seen the that meme that shows like the path for entrepreneurship? Like, oh my god, like this is great, and oh my god, I'm going bankrupt.
Yeah.
Oh, I wouldn't trade this for the world. And it's that roller coaster, right? That it's difficult to ride that roller coaster sometimes, right? It like you have to have a stomach for it,
especially when it's your everyday life.
Oh my gosh! So, you know, so kind of tying it back to my story, there came a point where, and Aaron knows this, you know, really well. My mom got sick with something that, you know, we still don't know. And she's, you know, mom's still strong doing her thing, but we still don't know exactly what it is. And it changed a lot of things for me and the way that I was looking at things. So at the time I was still working at the bank and like had these side things that I was doing, and, you know, the time that needs to be put in is going to get put in when I had the time. And then when my mom was going through that period, especially at first when it was just out of the blue and just a sudden change, I needed to take a step back from work.
Okay.
Right. So when you talk about that, the difficult thing, it was I remember the countless conversations that I had with you and other people where it was kind of like, why don't you just dive fully into the business world, like, you know, what you're doing in entrepreneurship. But I had a good job and I was winning awards and I was making some money, and, you know, it was that.
You can always go back if you wanted to.
It was comfortable.
You know what? One thing that I will say is it set a foundation for me. So there's tons of people that I got to give a lot of credit to. But they set a foundation for me. I learned a lot there that I was able to carry into some of the activities that I do on my own now. Sure. But what pushed me over and made me say, like, I got to leave this was that situation with my mom, right?
So purpose.
But when you talk about that difficult situation, it was kind of like, okay, I'm taking care of my mom. I've now left my job because I want to be more available, and my head's not even there. And I'm balancing all of these other things. How do I navigate that, right? Like, how do I survive and take care of my mom in this new world that's uncertain? But that was the push. Like, it didn't matter.
Yeah.
Right. It was like, I need to be here.
Yeah.
And so that was the push out the door, man. It was like and it was, you know, it was a bit of a baby step at first. I took a 6-month leave of absence, right, where I could have gone back.
Yeah.
And then the 6 months was up like that.
Like that. Yeah.
And it was like, no, I'm not going back. I survived the 6 months. It wasn't a paid leave.
Yeah.
Right. And so if I survived that period, I was like, I can continue to survive.
Yeah.
Right. And it ramped things up for me. It was like, I need to make things happen, right? Like, I'm hungry.
What has been the best part of entrepreneurship for you?
The best part of entrepreneurship has been creating opportunities for other people.
So it's not flight mode activated
Nah.
when you're on the airplane every time.
Well, and the funny thing is, like, if you see my profile, like, I travel a lot, but that's also related to business. I'm gonna get back into
But that's
like
what
where
I mean.
business
That's
is
what
now.
entrepreneurship allows you to do that.
Yeah, it's all business, right?
Yeah.
The highlights are great, and we have a good time while we're away.
No, but what I'm trying to say is like entrepreneurship, the business gets you flying. I
absolutely,
know it's not pleasure.
absolutely,
It could never be
absolutely,
pleasure.
absolutely.
Think about something so funny, but I'm not gonna tell you.
Yeah, but it
What, the
was
drone shot?
No, I'm not gonna.
I know what you're talking about.
I know you're talking about.
I know
too.
exactly what you're talking about.
But I called it the drone because he got caught.
Oh yeah. Okay. All right. Anyways.
Oh
yeah.
man,
Sorry, viewers, you're not getting that. Go ahead.
hilarious.
So I guess let's go back.
Yeah.
Talk about the journey. So you guys, the New York firm came out to you.
Yeah.
So what happened there?
So things were good. Like, okay, like we have a mandate. We know what we're doing now, and we actually have some backing to do it. Right?
Yeah.
We have the capital. We can get it done. And then things changed, right, from a government perspective. So the microfit program that I was talking about started to wind down. Right? Government's changed.
So was that okay? So was that program conservative program?
No,
And
it was
then-
liberal.
It was liberal.
It was a
So
liberal
who
program.
changed it?
So conservatives came in, right?
Okay, yeah,
provincial
yeah,
level.
Yes.
At the provincial level, right?
Yeah.
Right? And so things started to change
Yeah. Okay.
rapidly, for
Rapidly,
us, right?
okay.
So it was like, okay, so we don't have the opportunity anymore to continue to grow in the way that we initially thought because the program's gone, right?
Yeah.
The only way that we can grow is through acquiring existing. Anything that exists is grandfathered in. But it changed the dynamic of the approach. But just slightly before that, again, all credit goes to X. He, even before that came, he started to pivot. He was like, okay, new technology, kind of leveraging our experience here. We started getting into electric mobility, right? And the two can be intertwined in some really interesting ways. So, you can have renewable energy that then supports your electric car,
Yes.
right? So you're not tied to the grid anymore. You can be off grid driving your car, right? But he wanted to kind of start shifting there. And so there were some government grants available that the company would have applied for and started developing charging stations.
Okay.
Right. So now there's like these two business lines. Here's the renewable solar energy portfolio, and here is electric transportation and electric charging development. And that kick-started a new expertise.
Okay.
Right. So there's all this learning going on here, but the change in government actually changed both things. Right. So now it was like, okay, this is going to change drastically. Different approach. Where can we take this next? And it made sense to go home. Right? And by home, I mean yacht, right? Go
Yeah,
like
man.
Jamaica. Like, I mean, you're not going to get much more sun there than anywhere else, right? So
Go back home, baby.
go back home.
But we definitely will have to because this guy is really in the zone, right? So
Yeah.
we can't go through everything today.
No.
It'd be too crazy. But we'll leave that one for part 2.
Oh, wow.
We have to bring X out.
We
if
have to
that's
bring
the case,
X
right?
on that
Okay.
one.
Yeah, no
when
doubt.
You
So-
get into that one.
So okay, so obviously we talk a lot about real estate at the beginning. Now let's just circle back. Like
Yeah.
you're doing the energy thing, and we're gonna leave that for our next part 2 with Carey, right?
Yeah, sure.
So how now does real estate now tie in to whatever you're gonna go forth with in the future?
So,
Because we're real estate guys, right?
yeah, so started there. Definitely going to continue in that space. Like I said earlier, it's the foundation of my own investment. So when you start to have businesses that are throwing off cash, you start to say, okay, well, where is that going to go?
Okay.
Right? And one of the staples of my investment portfolio, and I think many investment
Many, yeah.
portfolios, is real estate for a number of reasons.
Okay.
Security, the inflation hedge.
Yes.
Just the sheer direction of the market in Toronto, and where I still believe it has the potential to go.
Yeah.
Tangible.
Yeah, it's tangible. Like there's so many reasons, right, that I think it should make up your portfolio. So for me,
So you kind of touched on Toronto. How do you feel about Toronto? Well, the market. You personally, obviously, you're not an expert.
Yeah.
And know what's going to be coming 10 years from now. But in terms of fundamentals, where do you see Toronto? Because I know a lot of our viewers, they're going to be, they think, well, Toronto's a little bit outpriced and it's not worth it.
You gotta
based on your experience, what would you say? And then I'll chime in on that.
Yeah,
after.
I think you gotta look at things on a global scale.
Now.
Yeah. So we're living in a world that's becoming smaller and smaller.
Yes.
Like I talked to my cousin who lives in the UK, and he's like, "Man, I got to pick up some property in Toronto. It's so cheap."
Exactly. It's
Wow, that's what they say.
Perspective. Right?
I'm like, yeah, I mean, I guess
You know what's so
relatively
funny? I was listening to something on CNBC,
Yeah.
and you know what they're saying? The world is turning to like Canada competing versus the States to Toronto competing against New York.
Yeah.
Or Paris or London. So now it's not even like
And
our
it's-
countries are, it's
yeah.
like we as Torontonians
Torontonians, yeah.
are going after jobs that are in New York or in London or going after entertainment jobs in LA.
And that's what I mean about the world becoming smaller, right? Like the world is kind of converging in on itself. Like the borders are starting to, mean less and less as far as it relates to like international business.
Yes.
Which is another reason why, our business is now international.
Yes.
Like we've left the market here, or this is not our primary focus. It's elsewhere because it can be elsewhere.
Yeah.
Right. Maybe 10, 15, 20 years ago, maybe a bit more difficult. In today's environment, you have that opportunity. But again, going back to real estate, it's when you look at your opportunities to invest in real estate and you look at, you start looking at other markets. Remember, like, Toronto is just one market in a
Global
almost
market.
unlimited number of markets. And there's a lot of security features that you can get in a relatively stable market like Toronto with a strong banking system that you're not going to find in any other places. Like the world is not Canada and the US. The world is massive. And so, when you kind of look at it, look at the potential for returns and the risk profile, Toronto still very much has an opportunity on a global scale. When you start to line up,
So
London and the Manhattans and the
So in terms of like you being a real estate investor, and you being in the Toronto market, what's your strategy to continue to invest in the Toronto market?
so twofold, right? So I'm always going to be,
And it doesn't have to just be the Toronto market,
Yeah.
because you may look at
Yeah.
other markets
Yeah.
around Toronto. But let's talk
Yeah.
specifically Toronto.
So Toronto is a very sound, strong market. I equate the strength of any real estate market to the rental market,
Okay.
right? You have an extremely low vacancy rate in Toronto right now, which means there's pent up demand. People want to live here. Because people want to live here, there's a need for real estate.
Yes.
And then on the other end of the equation is those that own the real estate, right?
Yeah.
And so, Toronto's becoming more and more of a hub for the world. People are coming here. So it'll always remain a foundational element of the things that I will continue to look at and invest in.
Okay.
For long term, right? You got to look at things on a longer time horizon.
Yeah.
Than it's not about a quick buck, right?
And that's what saved me in being in Hamilton.
Yeah.
10 years.
Yeah.
I was there literally from day 1 to 10 years.
Yeah.
I didn't keep everything for 10 years, but my very last property exit was 10 years. And that's what you said. And in Toronto, people have to even think 20 years, right? And that's a good point that you made. It's basically staying locked in and knowing that, you're building for the future.
Yeah.
I think people look at real estate wrong.
Too short of a time horizon.
Too short of a time horizon, and have to understand that this is wealth.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And the millennials today and the younger generation, they're chasing riches.
Yeah.
Which is immediate.
Yeah.
Right.
But you can't blame them, because you know what? If like, what I always say, people get skewed. You guys went to Hamilton. You've seen ups and downs. There's a lot of people that's come into the market and they've only seen this.
Yeah,
so
yeah,
like,
for sure.
so
Yeah,
quick
yeah.
money, of
Yeah.
course. There's people that
Yeah,
invest in
yeah,
Toronto
yeah.
market, bought a condo.
Yeah.
2 years later, it's worth $300,000 more. They think the market's very skewed because people only seen up.
Yeah.
Not a lot of people have seen down.
Yeah.
And it's not to say, like, it's so funny because I always talk about this, and I'm a mortgage agent. I don't want obviously the market to fall, but like it's a reality, right?
Absolutely.
And I think that we have to do our due diligence. And what I've heard from both of you guys, like just sitting on the fly on the wall on this, is it's that preparation before you actually jump into the game, right? And that's what people need to spend their time on. And you do your due diligence on Toronto, and I see it. Like you talk about vacancies in rental markets, and there's very low. And I look at jobs and I look at commercial space.
Yeah, you got to look at both sides, right? Like the demand side and the supply side of the marketplace, right?
Yes.
So and it's driving the long-term market in a direction. You guys familiar with what an annex chart is? Like,
yes.
Right? You're going to have this volatility throughout, but the general trend based on some of the fundamentals is in a certain direction, in my view.
Yes.
Right?
You know, just listen to you guys quickly. I just want to jump in because I always want to look from a viewer standpoint. They might be like, oh, Carey sounds like a very smart guy. Jason sounds like a very smart guy. Aaron may sound like a very smart guy because he said annex chart and volatility and all those things. But, you know, for the basic guy coming into the market, just look at like basic fundamentals, right? I look at it from the perspective of if Metrolinx is dropping $500 billion into infrastructure in Toronto.
What does that mean? To
create transportation. They just pretty much gave you the answer that Toronto's on the up and up because they're one of the most sophisticated investors.
You can cheat on the test too.
Or you could also do this too. Like if you look at the end of the day, they're building a whole island attached to the city. For what reason? There has to be a reason. Number one, they're trying to change the way the water's going because the water's not flowing right. I was actually reading an article. They have a tunnel that's something like 60 meters high that they're going from Coxwell to the DVP that's going into that new Villiers village that they're building. So, Aaron, you say it all the time. Follow the money. Where's the money going? Where's the money going right now? It looks like it's going downtown. It's going into transportations. There's a war against cars.
War against cars. You know, it's just you just gotta look at it from the perspective. We're starting off, let's say, $100,000.
Yeah.
And these guys have billions of dollars. They're doing 10 times the research you're gonna be able to do to know if their investment is safe.
Correct.
So wherever they're going, I'm just gonna piggyback off.
Follow the money.
Just follow the money.
And
then while you're there, look for little signs of why they're here. Okay. 10 minutes from the airport.
You start to learn the game.
It's off, not too far from the highway. Oh, the LRT is running up this route, connecting Mount Dennis and Scarborough. They want to flow business down this way. Looking at where Go Transit's running all the way out to Niagara Falls now. And then just follow transportation, because what does that show you? They're setting up for immigration to come in. Yeah. And these individuals are going to come in. They're trying to take them away from cars. They're trying to displace them in the areas that were once low income. But now it's affordable for them, and keeping people in the city. And at the end of the day, it's like people just gotta wake up and look, and pay attention.
The one thing that I hear that I think is dangerous in the marketplace is I hear a lot of like realtors that say like, oh, it's a property. The value only goes up.
Oh God, I hate
like
that.
It's very scary when I hear that, right?
It's very scary.
Because no, that just means you don't understand the game at all, right? Like this is supply and demand.
You're just telling us what your grandparents told you.
Yeah.
What's going to make this property go up?
Yeah. So let's get that out of the way. Yeah. Property values don't just go up by some magic number, right? It's simple. People want to buy things. Yeah. People want to sell things, right? If a lot of people want to buy, you'll have an upward pressure on price, period.
That's it.
If there's too much supply, there may be a downward pressure on price. And that ends up not being a straight line up. No. Right? And so when you're thinking about real estate, going back to what you were saying with those who made returns in the upswing. Yeah. Right? And I'm happy we did, which is good. Yeah. But it's not with a view to that. You can't enter with a view to, I want to be in and out in a year or two, right? And the point that I was making before with just entrepreneurship in general is like, I'm on a roller coaster every day. You're on a roller coaster every day. You're on a roller coaster every day being entrepreneurs. Investing in real estate is also a roller coaster. Yeah. One of the things that I tend to like about real estate, going back to rental demand, is if your property has a strong rental demand and rents can continue to carry your costs, then you can weather the storm, right? Versus, and that has risk too, like if the rental market changes. Yes. But again, looking at some of those fundamentals, like people want to live in the city. Yep. People are going to continue to pour into the city, right? Whereas in business, you know, you're your safety net, right? Like just that confidence, because you're gonna get batted around every day. And again, it goes back to that meme, like, oh my God, I'm going bankrupt, and then this is the best thing that's ever. Oh my God, I made so much money.
Have either of you guys had that happen to you in the same day? Where you're like, I'm going bankrupt,
Oh,
and then later in the afternoon you're like,
Yeah,
oh
yeah.
my God, I won the lottery.
Not to that extreme, but
Oh man,
You're not.
no,
he hasn't been there yet.
the oh my God, I'm going bankrupt part. Yeah, but not oh my gosh, I won the lottery. It's like, oh my gosh, I survived the day.
Yeah,
Right. But like I said, with entrepreneurship and, you know, business and, you know, just conquering this thing called life, it's all about, you know, having confidence in yourself, and it's all about having a plan. A lot of people are confident without a plan, though.
yeah.
So when I say confident, meaning you're confident in your plan. You know, wake up every day, you know what your goal is. And a lot of people on social media have been messaging me saying, oh my gosh, you have the right outlook on 2020. And this is not new to me, but I looked at 2009 to 2019 as my decade. I went super hard I got into real estate. My first property was 2009.
Yeah.
Then I was able to acquire my first development project 2019. But when I started in 2009, if you spoke to me, I would have told you I want to be a developer.
Yeah.
But then I went through the process of buying single family homes, buying duplex, triplex, fiveplex, sixplex, buying, renovating, doing rent to own, buying pre-construction, all in that 10 years. And then on that 10th year, I didn't even realize it. I actually put my deposit down in my first development property. So now 2020, thank you. 2020 to the next 10 year is trying to perfect the development side of the business.
Yeah.
So you can't look at things from a yearly perspective. You got to put a good long-term plan, like Carey's saying, long-term plan in place, and stay in the zone as long as you can and block out the noise.
Yeah.
And that's the only way you're going to get true work done is by putting a long-term plan, staying in the zone, staying focused, staying on the mission, blocking out the noise. And the problem is which is sad, is when I started off the decade in 2009, I think Instagram just started, right? It just started. Like I remember Instagram for me was like taking a picture from my camera and it going directly onto my Instagram. You know, there's a button for camera, you just click it to go. Now you upload a picture and you filter it and do all these things. Before it was just an organic picture. And when I started, I just got into real estate. And a lot of people were on Instagram. So I had like a good 5 years of laser focus of not having to compare my life to anybody.
Yeah.
There was no gurus coming out.
Yeah.
There's no so-called I made it type of guys out there where you're like, oh, I want to be like this guy. I want to be like Grant. I want to be like Gary V. I want to be like this YouTuber. I got a true, authentic head start. Right? So the problem with a lot of people now is they have too much information. So they don't even know what to do.
Analysis paralysis or something like that. Is that what they call it?
Analysis paralysis.
Yeah, that's it. That's what you say.
And for me, it's like, you know, I'm just happy that I got that start. And now I have to, and this podcast that we're creating is called In the Zone for a reason. It's getting people back to that, put the blinders on and focus, right? And practice and hit your shots, because, you know, 10 years is going to run by. Look, Carey, 10 years ago, we're different than how we are now.
Sure.
Even though we're still here in the flesh, our growth has been astronomical. Jason, I've seen his growth. And, you know, the next 10 years is going to be, at least for our age group, is going to make or break a lot of people. Not for the sense of financials, because, you know, money comes, money goes, right? You can make it, you can risk it. But it's how people are going to start to feel about themselves. Are they going to feel like they can grow abundantly for the next 20 years after this decade? Or do they feel like the world's closing in on them because they didn't make the moves that they need to make in this decade, right? Because by the time this decade is done, I'm 43, right? So am I old and ancient? No. But that window to get things done is going to shrink for a lot of people, right? So I hope this podcast could, you know, enlighten people and make them understand that, look, Carey Escoffery starting real estate, it was turbulent right off the jump, right? But he locked in, didn't give up, and stayed on the path where he was able to get into the renewable energy space and then find success there, and then circle back to real estate. And now the two
Merge.
coexist and merge and they exist together. People have to understand, just because something doesn't work out the first time, it isn't the end all be all.
Yeah.
Right. Like I look at it as Jackson's point, my development. All three of us right now, or I'll say you two, are helping me on that mission. This is by far the biggest mission I've been on in my life. And it makes me feel like how I felt when I bought my first property, right? You know, I'm scared. My feelings are up and down. Jason goes through the feelings with me all the time. He can tell. He's been a good support. You know, he knows how much to bark back at me. You know, and my feelings are all over the place. And my confidence, some days are high. And then some days it's like, okay. You know, it's that roller coaster ride Carey's talking about. But it's to show our viewers that these are all human instincts, human feelings that each and every single one of us are going to continue to go through. Yeah. Right? It's not, if you feel that way, you're less of a person than me, or vice versa. It's, oh shit, these are the feelings of an entrepreneur that are going to happen naturally.
So just kind of picking off of that, right? Like, I'm like, as you were saying that, I started thinking to myself, like, what? I think you asked me earlier, like, what does in the zone mean to me?
Yeah.
Man, in the zone is like getting batted around and getting up and continuing the mission.
I love that one.
Like it's Jordan fever game.
Resilience.
Right? Yeah. Like you pulled it off.
Yeah.
Right?
What does Rocky Balboa say? Get knocked down 10 times.
Get up 11.
Man, it's I can, like, I know we're going to have a part 2.
Yeah.
Right, you went through your hits. No one went through their hits like you this
2019.
year. And your suit still looks clean.
Yeah, man, we're good. 2019 was like, 2019 wasn't a roller coaster. It was like drop zone. Yeah. Being real, right?
You were up and then boom.
So, you know.
Well, we don't have to get into all.
No, let's not get into that. But like, all it is that the one thing that I'm going to say that I'm like sitting here and listening to your guys' story, like I've heard bits and pieces of it over the time that we've spent together, but now actually hearing you guys together, I'm gonna say 3 things just to really summarize this podcast. 1, you got to stay in the zone even though when you don't feel like it. So Jordan flu game, we got to be in there.
You got to be in these. And just to close out when with this drop zone thing, it's like we went really high and we came down really hard, but I think in hindsight, when we look at where we dropped to, it's not at the peak of where we were, but we're still significantly higher than where we started, right? And it's that context. It's like, wait a minute, we're actually a lot better off than we were last year or the year before.
Is it like that quote that we used to say? It's not that we aim too low.
Exactly, right.
What is it?
So it's
not that we aim too high and we miss.
Yeah.
We aim too low and we actually hit it.
Yeah.
But for us, it's the opposite.
Yeah.
Right? We aim so high that there has to be a point where you have to readjust and fall.
Yeah.
But where you fell was a lot higher than
when you started.
Yeah.
So even though you took a loss, you can rebound and
go. It's easier to rebound.
And get back up there.
Well, it's like, it's like Ray Dalio and the Principles when you watch the film. And it talks about growth. Like there's a cycle. You start off and then you go down. Yeah. But then every step, you're still going up on that scale, you know what I mean? Yeah. So one of the quotes I always say is like, if your goal is the moon, you got to reach for the stars, because if you fall on the moon, at least you came. Yeah. You made it somewhere. Yeah. You got out of the atmosphere. So
what's number 2 for you?
So so number 2 is
which is staying in the
start
zone.
without you need to have a plan. So without knowing where you're gonna go, now like we talked about, it may change. But if you don't know where you're gonna go, then how are you really gonna get there?
Yeah. Right.
So and then the third thing that I learned,
you're not even gonna start moving.
You're not even gonna start moving. And then the third thing I learned is the team. Like it seems like you've done everything that you've done, beside obviously your professional career at BMO and stuff like that. You've worked with others. Like others have helped you. I haven't heard you say anything. This is me, Carey, done this.
No.
It's you talk about, your first ventures in Hamilton, now your ventures with X, and you talk about all the people that helped you at BMO. So it's we can't do this alone.
No.
This is a team sport, even though we are going after our own individual goals, right?
In some way, shape, or form, other people are involved in the process. Some way, shape, or form.
Just to add to that, a lot of people, they get into business and they get into things with individuals, and they form a team And right off the bat, the team is wrong.
Yeah.
Because most of the time,
Oh, man.
your first teammate is the person that is there that believes in you the most.
Yes.
So you bring them along.
Yeah.
And then you pick up all the teammates along the way. And what I've learned is, a lot of people aren't going to work out on the journey.
No.
And, you have to learn to cut those people off quickly. And it's not doing them a disjustice. You're actually helping them.
Absolutely.
Because not everyone that I'm starting to realize is built to come along on the journey.
They may want to.
They may want to, but it may not be the best thing for them.
They may think they want to.
Yeah,
Yes.
they may
Right?
think they
Yeah.
want to. And I'm starting to realize that, some people are just good starters.
Yes.
Some people are good in-betweeners. And most people aren't good at the end.
No.
Right? Because business is a lifetime battle.
Yeah.
Right? And business is something that you have to be able to think quick on your feet.
Yeah.
One thing I've always prided myself on is figuring shit out.
Yeah.
Right? There's days where it's like, oh my gosh, I don't know how. And then
Yeah.
it's like, boom, 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 boom. So it's almost like working with the end in mind. It's basically like, I line up things. I work 5 years ahead of myself. So by the time, I run into a problem, there's something trickling in to take care of that problem. And entrepreneurship and partnerships, you need people who can figure things out. Don't need a lot of direction.
Yeah.
People full of confidence. People that are true and authentic to the goal. And it's not just money driven, right? When I started real estate, it took me 7 years to make my first decent pay,
Yeah.
right? The minute someone doesn't make their first money on the first month,
They're quitting.
they're out,
They're quitting.
right? And then they jump into something else. And
And you're just resetting the clock, right?
well, my mentor gave me the best advice, and I think this is, the best. And I've stayed in this zone for 10 years off of this one thing. I was going to go buy my first property, and I asked everybody their opinion, and mostly everyone was negative.
Yeah.
So I start to get frozen, and I start to second guess myself. And as an entrepreneur, that's dangerous.
Yeah.
Right. And my mentor, his name's Joe. He came up to me and goes, "What's wrong with this property?" I go, "Has this, and this. This is what people told me." He's like, "Yeah, small minor problems that we can fix." He's like, "If you quit on this property today, you're gonna quit on everything that you ever want to start." So he goes, "The choice is yours." So I closed on the property. Can you believe I've probably transacted 50 plus properties, and I've always closed on them? I've never lost a property because, thank you. No, I'm just saying, because it's about the habits that you create in the beginning.
Yes.
It's the start and the beginning is the most important.
Yep.
I was a young kid, didn't know anything about closing, but I got pushed to close, and I know what the feeling is to close, and I know the battle, what battle of what closing really,
Yeah.
what it takes to close. And I developed that habit where it's like, oh, closing is not an
has to
option.
happen.
It has to happen, right? So yeah, and I've been in that zone for the last 10 years of just making sure what I start, and Carey would tell you, what I start, I try to finish. And not everything I finish is successful. But at least I can say I got to the finish line, and then I create a book and I say the things I did well and the things I didn't do well. And sometimes the not so well part is outweighs the good.
Yeah.
But then you live to see another, and you continue to fight, right? So we got to look at things as, like Carey said, it's a long game. And I hope, Carey's our first guest. Really appreciate you coming out and being our first guest.
Thank you,
and,
Carey.
And
My man.
yeah, and sharing the importance of, and the reason why I wanted to bring you on first is because not only, were we young when we started, you were the first person to actually see me in the journey, like legit.
doubt.
Like I was sitting in my aunt's house.
Yeah.
I remember going to Staples, buying a binder, buying a booklet, just copying everything these guys do. And I remember Carey, I'll call him 2, 3 in the morning. How do I do an Excel sheet? How do I do the formulas? And he'll walk me through to the point where I was able to make a basic Excel sheet that would give me a basic enough information to make basic enough decisions.
Yeah.
He was the first person to help me do that. And then he was the first person to help me through tribunal, help me through, he was there when I bought my first property. He was there when I didn't even have enough money on closing.
I think I helped you get your G2.
He helped me get my
driving test.
G2. Yeah.
Tell you how to drive, bro.
Taught me how to drive. He was there on my closing.
Father.
Relax. He was there when on my closing, and I was short because I didn't know what closing costs were.
Right.
I'm like, closing costs? I gave you my down payment. Remember, this was all 12 grand I saved up from like throwing parties. So I had to run to BMO across the street, cash advance my credit card for the closing costs, and come back. And then when I got the keys, I looked at them and said, so what's next? They're like, go see your tenants. I was like, oh shit. I was so scared to go see my tenants. They came with me. So, you know, Carey's been there with me for the journey, and now we're here at the Golden Triangle Development. Jason, you know, you've been in the zone with me for at least a year now. You know, beautiful setup. You know, this was you putting this together. You know, we sat down for hours discussing what we're going to be doing. And I think it's time for the platform.
Yeah, let's go.
To share with our followers and our clients and the people that look up to us, to start sharing that knowledge and bring individuals like Carey on board to show them like, yo, if you want this, it's not easy.
Yeah.
But it's not impossible. But these are the tips and these are the habits that are needed to be successful.
Exactly.
Failure is part of it, and we're letting you know from now it's part of it.
It's gonna happen.
Losses, man.
Losses turn into lessons. But one important thing before I hand it over to you, Jason, on closing is this: entrepreneurship and business is not for everybody.
No,
it is not.
Entrepreneurship and business is for a certain individual, and we'll get into that over the sessions.
One thing I'll say, there's also levels to it, right? So I mean, I see a lot of like micro opportunities emerging in just like say the digital space right now.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Where you can kind of do things that aren't gonna like throw your life into like a spiral, right?
Yeah.
It just takes those are just talent based.
Yeah, and so there's levels to it,
Yeah.
right? But if you want to be at the highest level,
Yeah.
like you got to be ready for the anxiety attacks.
Yeah.
You
when you want to get to entrepreneurship where you're responsible for others,
oh my gosh,
meaning you're
yeah.
running an office,
Yeah.
payroll,
Yeah.
contractors, you're doing all those things.
That's
the roller coaster ride.
that's
But
level.
I see a lot of, like you said, little spin-offs are coming where you set up a camera, get a couple lights, and you just, you know, you're a funny guy,
Yeah.
or you're a YouTube star, which is good. There's a level of talent there, and
hard work, yeah.
that's hard work too. Not trying to discredit any of that. And then a lot of those people, you know, they struggle because they don't turn the art into business, where they miss out on opportunities.
The thing that to that, I bridge to that is it's when you start to be responsible for other people,
That's what I said,
right? Like
yeah.
that's when my head starts to spin, right? Like it's okay, we have employees.
Yeah.
We have, you know, contractors and vendors working for us, and if you don't work, they don't work, right?
Yeah.
That's the level I think you're talking about, right?
Exactly.
It's because I you know, everyone that knows me knows that integrity, friendships, and family, and really being responsible for people is at the forefront of everything.
Yeah.
Right. Like I'm not gonna pay myself if I'm paying myself last.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's what business is, right? When you get into situations where now people are, you know, you're responsible to people.
Yeah.
That's a different level. And going back to what you were saying is some people may not be prepared or ready to take on those types of responsibilities.
Exactly.
Yeah. So it's like you might be like we were talking about earlier, like you may not be a number one, but you could be number 2 and number 3 and number 4.
There's
And
levels.
you could still
Find your
make
comfort.
a lot of money.
for sure. Yeah,
if
yeah.
you're saying if you're the number 3 at Facebook, you're still a billionaire.
Yeah, man, for sure.
You may not be Zuck, but you're still rich, right? So it's like I think we all have to figure out where we fit and where we fit comfortably in it. But like at the end of the day, you know, it's something that Ray Dalio says in his book Principles: pain plus reflection equals progress.
Yeah.
And everything that we've talked about today
Is all of-
pain plus reflection, progress. So I think a lot of times when we find troubles, we don't reflect after we have the pain.
Yeah.
So we go through the pain, we suffer. Oh, this is the worst thing in the world, and
give
we're
up.
done.
Yeah, you give
but
up.
instead of reflecting, be like, if I change this one little thing,
It went wrong here.
it went wrong here. This is where I messed up.
Yeah.
Now I reflect. Now I'm gonna progress. You know?
Because that loss, when you propel forward, is gonna look like, you ever been in a plane and you look and you're like on the ground, you're like, shit. And they say you're gonna go like 60,000 up in the air, or whatever, miles up in the air, or whatever, feet, right? And then you're like, shit, that's far, you know. And then when you start getting up there, you're like, oh, this is easy. Like it wasn't that difficult. Then you look back at the earth, you're like, oh shit, so small.
Yeah.
So that's how I look at my problems. I look at it like, yes, when you're on the ground with the problem, it looks major.
Yeah.
But when you start to reflect and then you start to drift away from the problem a little bit because you're back on progress mode, you're like, oh, that problem was actually pretty small.
Yeah, the
It
amount
wasn't
of
that serious.
the amount of like, oh, this one is this is what shatters it all. It's all gonna come. I can't even. I remember having those moments. I can't even remember what the
Why?
issue was anymore.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And all be all.
Yeah.
No, there's no such thing.
There's no
right?
such thing.
It all depends on you, right? At the end of the day. So, we'd like to
But
thank you.
you'll doubt yourself too, though, right?
Oh,
You will
doubt's
go through
part of the game,
through those
too.
motions where you kind of doubt yourself. It's getting back on.
Well,
But you know what clears the doubt? Knowing the trajectory and where you're trying to go.
man.
Yeah, yeah,
And then that's it. So
working with the end in mind.
that's it. So let's end that on that.
man.
Like think about the end in mind. We want to thank you, Carey, for coming to our
Hey,
first
man,
podcast.
this was great. Awesome.
Hey, and one thing before I go. Stay in the zone.
Stay in the zone.
You know, I'm in the zone.